Tell me something, stranger. What would you do if a road came alive once a year? No horses. No driver. Just a stagecoach rolling through the dust, lanterns burning, voices whisper in air from the grave. Would you nail your windows shut like the townsfolk? Or would you look? They say if you dare to peek, you'll see the faces of the lost, kinfolk, lovers, enemies, sitting inside that cursed coach. One man did. Elias Boone, the blacksmith. Strong as iron, yet haunted by fire in his eyes. He found a book, torn and cursed, pages that chained the dead to that endless road. Now here's the question I ask you. If it were you standing at the forge, blood moon burning overhead, would you save your soul by feeding that page to the fire? Or would you let the dead ride forever? The old road stretched beyond the town, winding through empty fields and past a cemetery long forgotten. Crooked gravestones leaned against each other, half buried in moss, while an ancient well, its stones blackened with age, gaped like a dark mouth in the earth. For as long as anyone could remember, stories had haunted this road. Once a year, under a blood-red moon, a carriage would appear. But it had no horses, no driver. Only lanterns flickered in the darkness, and voices, fragmented, distant, unearthly, drifted through the night air. The townsfolk would shutter their windows, nail their doors, and hide, trembling, unwilling to witness what lay beyond. Elias Boone, the town's blacksmith, was 32, broad as an oak, with hands blackened by soot and calloused from years of hammering iron. His hair and mustache were thick and dark, and his eyes were steady, calm, yet always observing. He had heard the stories since childhood. Unlike others, he did not flee from fear. Instead, he was drawn to the unknown. This year, under the blood moon, he decided he would see the carriage for himself. The air grew heavy as dusk faded into night. Mist rolled over the fields like slow-moving water. Elias's boots crunched on the gravel road as he approached the cemetery, each step echoing against the silent stones. The wind shifted, carrying voices, or perhaps echoes of memory, from far away. And then he saw it, the phantom stagecoach. Black as the void, moving silently across the ground, lanterns swaying, their pale light illuminating ghostly faces pressed against the windows. Among the faces, he saw people long gone, strangers, townsfolk who had disappeared years before, and, to his shock, a face he recognized, his own cousin, smiling at him as if no time had passed. Elias's heart pounded, yet he did not move. The carriage seemed alive, moving deliberately, as though inviting him to follow. Whispers filled the night, fragments of conversations from lives long ended. He felt compelled forward, as if some unseen force guided his feet. Near the ancient well, Elias noticed a leather-bound journal lying on the stones, its pages fluttering as if alive. He reached for it, a shiver of recognition running through him. This book held answers that had eluded the town for generations. The carriage rumbled onward into the mist, vanishing as silently as it had appeared, but Elias knew this was only the beginning. He would follow the road, uncover its secrets, and confront the shadows tied to the lives trapped in the phantom coach. Elias carried the journal carefully, the leather warm under his calloused hands. Each page was filled with cramped handwriting, sketches of faces, maps of the old road, and strange symbols he did not recognize. The town had always whispered of a traveler who had walked the road long ago, documenting what he saw, but the journal in Elias's hand seemed far older than anything the town's memory preserved. As he turned the pages, a chill ran down his spine. The final entry was missing. It was as if someone, or something, had deliberately torn the last page away, leaving only empty space. Elias could feel its absence like a wound. The wind picked up, scattering mist across the road. He glanced around. Shadows stretched and twisted, unnatural shapes forming in the fog. The voices came again, louder this time, laughter, cries, arguments, snippets of lives that once existed, echoing into eternity. He realized that the carriage, the lanterns, and the ghostly passengers were more than legends. They were fragments of souls trapped between this world and the next. Each year, the stagecoach returned, carrying memories, regrets, and unfinished stories, all bound by the missing page of the journal. Elias's heart ached as he recognized more faces among the passengers, neighbors he had played with as a boy, merchants long dead, even the blacksmith who had taught him his craft. And yet, there was one presence that drew his gaze, a cousin who had vanished during a winter storm years ago. He was alive, somehow, in this ghostly form, yet unreachable. The realization hit Elias with unbearable weight. This road did not merely carry spirits, it preserved moments, memories, and lives frozen in time. The missing page, he understood, was the key. Without it, the souls remained tethered, endlessly circling the phantom route. Determined, Elias resolved to learn more about the journal. He returned to his forge, the firelight a fragile comfort against the cold whispering night. The journal seemed to pulse with energy in his hands, the symbols on the pages almost alive, as if trying to communicate. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the rhythm of hammer on anvil as Elias's mind raced. The more he read, the more he felt a connection, not only to the spirits but to the road itself. It was alive, a conduit between the living and the dead, demanding recognition, respect, and ultimately, action. By dawn, Elias had a plan. He would track the road, observe the carriage when it returned, and confront whatever force controlled it. The town's fear would not deter him. He was no longer just a blacksmith, but a witness, a seeker of truths hidden beyond mortal understanding. Each step forward was heavy with anticipation and dread, yet he felt compelled to continue. For the missing page was not just paper, it was the anchor of lost souls. If he could find it or understand its secret, he might finally free them. And somewhere, in the shadows of the misty road, the stagecoach waited. Silent, patient, eternal. Days bled into nights as Elias devoted himself to the journal. The forge grew cold, the hammer idle, while he traced strange symbols, sketched forgotten roads, and copied faces that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking. Every mark, every cryptic note, was a whisper from the past, and he felt the weight of generations pressing on him. But the town did not share his fascination. Whispers followed him like shadows. He's lost his mind, they said. Children were pulled away from the forge, neighbors avoided his gaze. Even elders who once admired his skill regarded him with suspicion. Some openly questioned his sanity. Others feared uncovering truths better left buried. Elias realized their eyes held more reverence for the road's secrets than for the lives trapped by it. He found little comfort in their doubt. Worse, he sensed eyes watching him at all hours, keeping vigil over the journal. Shadows of old loyalties lingered in corners of the town, guarding the road's legacy. He could feel them, resistant, wary, ready to act if he ventured too close. Still, he persisted. One evening, he carried the journal to the town's old library, a place dusted with cobwebs and forgotten tomes. Hours passed as he pored over maps, diaries, and obscure chronicles. He cross-referenced the sketches with records of vanished travelers and faded legends. Slowly, patterns emerged, symbols marking stages of the phantom road, hints of a cycle maintained for centuries, and references to a forest at the edge of old maps. The final page of the journal, torn away, gnawed at him like a wound. Someone, or something, had ensured the souls remained tethered. The library offered clarity, the forest was the key. There, he might witness the stagecoach, and perhaps the missing page. Alone, surrounded by piles of aged paper and flickering candlelight, Elias made a silent vow. He would follow the road, confront its guardians, and uncover the truth. The townspeople might not trust him, might even work to stop him, but freeing the trapped souls was not a choice, it was his duty. By dusk, journal in hand, he left the forge and headed toward the forest. The leather-bound pages pulsed with faint energy, guiding him past mist-shrouded fields and old landmarks. Night fell, the path narrowed, flanked by gnarled oaks that seemed to lean toward him. Elias felt the forest breathing, waiting. Somewhere ahead, the stagecoach and trapped souls were near, and the missing page of the journal, the key to freeing them, was within his reach. The forest seemed alive, whispering and shifting as Elias moved between the ancient trees. Each step forward made the shadows stretch longer, twisting into forms that seemed almost human. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decayed leaves, and every sound, the crack of a branch, the rustle of unseen animals, made his heart leap. Yet he pressed on, the journal clutched tightly against his chest. It pulsed under his fingers, as if sensing the proximity of the stagecoach and the souls trapped within. Through the fog, he saw the faint glow of lanterns. The carriage had stopped in a small clearing, surrounded by gnarled oaks. The passengers pressed their faces against the windows, whispering, pointing, as if begging him to act. Elias's eyes fell on his cousin again, the face both familiar and impossibly distant. It struck him with unbearable clarity. These souls were bound not by magic alone, but by memory, by stories unfinished, promises unkept, lives left incomplete. The missing page in the journal was the tether, the final link that held them to the road. As Elias approached, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, yet a cold wind carried new voices, murmuring threats. Somewhere in the town, he realized, there were those who served the way of shadows. They had protected the journal for centuries, ensuring that the souls remained captive. He could sense their presence, a malevolent force watching from the darkness beyond the clearing. If he acted, they would try to stop him. If he hesitated, the spirits would remain imprisoned. The choice was his, yet the risk was beyond imagining. The blacksmith placed the journal on the forest floor and opened it to the blank space where the final page had once been. His hands trembled, but his resolve did not waver. He whispered the words he found scribbled in the margins, fragments of instructions left by the long-dead traveler who had chronicled the phantom road. The ground beneath him seemed to pulse with life, the fog curling around his feet like restless tendrils. The carriage shifted, wheels scraping the earth silently, as if reacting to his actions. The spirits leaned closer to the windows, their faces full of hope and desperation. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward, a town elder known for her devotion to the road's dark legacy. Her eyes gleamed in the lantern light, and she raised her hands, chanting words Elias did not understand. The fog thickened, swirling around him, trying to push him back, to protect the tether that bound the souls. Elias felt the heat of fear press against his chest, but he raised his hammer in one hand and the journal in the other. He had no spells, no magic of his own, only willpower and determination. The voices of the trapped passengers grew louder, pleading, urging him to act. Elias inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of centuries pressing upon him, and then, he struck. The journal cracked open, a single, bright flame igniting across its surface. The shadows shrieked, the fog recoiled, and for a heartbeat, the forest fell silent. The carriage trembled, lanterns flickering wildly, and the spirits pressed their faces to the windows, as if sensing the possibility of freedom. Elias's hands burned, but he held firm. The forest waited, breathless. The road waited. And somewhere in the mist, the stagecoach trembled on the edge of eternity, ready to reveal whether the blacksmith's courage was enough to break the chains of the past. Flames licked the edges of the journal, casting flickering light across the forest clearing. Elias felt the heat on his skin, but he did not release his grip. The whispers of the trapped soul swelled into a chorus, a mixture of fear, hope, and longing. Each face pressed against the windows of the phantom carriage seemed more defined, more desperate. Elias knew that every second counted. The longer the journal remained intact, the stronger the tether, the more the shadows of the Way of Shadows could resist him. The elder from the town raised her voice, chanting louder, her words slicing through the night air like cold steel. Shadows leapt from the trees, twisting and writhing toward Elias, attempting to snuff out the light, to preserve the bond that kept the souls chained. He swung the journal into the forge of the firelight that flared around him, the paper cracking, smoke curling upward, carrying a scent both acrid and sacred. The stagecoach shuddered, the lantern swinging violently as if caught in a storm that existed only for it. And then, something miraculous happened. Faces in the windows softened, their expression shifting from despair to wonder. His cousin's face pressed closer, eyes wide, mouth forming silent words of gratitude. The carriage began to move again, but differently now, lighter, almost buoyant, as if unburdened by centuries of anchored souls. Elias felt a pull in his chest, a magnetic tug drawing him toward the edge of the clearing, toward the road where all the horrors and mysteries had begun. The elder screamed in fury, stepping forward to snatch the journal, but the flames leapt higher, a living barrier, and she recoiled. Shadows shrieked, twisting into grotesque forms that clawed at the ground and the air, yet they could not cross the protective glow. Elias's muscles burned with effort, but he stood firm. With a final, forceful motion, he flung the remaining page of the journal into the heart of the fire. A brilliant flash illuminated the entire clearing, and the phantom stagecoach shivered as though waking from a long, dark dream. The whispers transformed into voices of joy and relief. One by one, the passengers lifted from their seats, stepping into the air as ethereal figures, drifting toward the moonlit sky. Faces that had known sorrow, fear, and death were finally free. Elias's cousin lingered a moment, looking down at him, eyes full of silent thanks before dissolving into the mist. The carriage, empty now, gave a last, mournful groan and vanished entirely, leaving nothing behind but the scent of smoke and the faintest shimmer of lantern light that faded with the night. Elias sank to his knees, exhausted yet unbroken. The forest was silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the breeze. The road lay empty, no sign of the horrors that had haunted it for generations. Yet Elias felt the weight of what he had witnessed settle in his chest. He had freed the souls, but the experience had changed him irrevocably. He had peered into the unknown, confronted forces beyond comprehension, and returned to the world of the living, bearing memories and shadows that would never leave his eyes. As dawn approached, the blood-red moon waned, casting the first pale light over the town. Elias rose, weary but resolute, carrying the charred journal. The stagecoach was gone, the whispers silenced, and for the first time in centuries, the road was truly empty. The town would awaken soon, unaware of the liberation that had occurred, yet he knew nothing would ever be the same for him, or for the souls he had released. The town awoke under a pale, trembling dawn, unaware that the phantom stagecoach had vanished for good. Windows remained shuttered as townsfolk stirred from uneasy sleep, their minds haunted by fleeting nightmares of shadows and whispers they could not place. Elias returned to his forge, carrying the charred journal like a talisman. The fire in the hearth mirrored the flicker of lanterns that had long haunted the road, but now the glow felt warm, protective, rather than sinister. Elias's hands were blackened from soot and ash, and his muscles ached from the exertion of confronting forces he barely understood. Yet there was a new weight on his shoulders, not of fear, but of responsibility. He had glimpsed the lives of those long gone, understood their regrets, and freed their tethered souls. But he had also peered into the road itself, a conduit between the living and the dead, and he knew that knowledge carried consequences. Some doors, once opened, could never be closed. As he worked at the forge, hammering iron and shaping metal, the world outside seemed sharper, clearer. Colors were brighter, sounds more distinct. Yet Elias felt eyes upon him that no one else could see, shadows lingering at the edges of perception, remnants of the journey he had endured. He realized that his connection to the phantom road had changed him permanently. The lives of the departed had left their mark upon him, and he carried fragments of their stories in his gaze, his posture, and the silence that now surrounded him. A knock at the forge door startled him. It was one of the town elders, a woman who had known him since childhood. She spoke cautiously, her voice trembling as she asked about the road, the journal, and the whispers that had plagued the town for generations. Elias met her gaze steadily, choosing his words with care. He told her nothing of the flames, the carriage, or the liberation of the souls. Instead, he spoke in vague terms of courage, of facing fear, of understanding what lay beyond human perception. The elder nodded slowly, sensing the gravity in his tone, but also recognizing that some truths were too vast for mortal minds. Days passed, and the town slowly returned to its routine. The road remained empty, its mist curling faintly in the mornings but hiding nothing unnatural. Yet Elias felt the absence of the carriage keenly, as though the road itself mourned its lost passengers. At night, he sometimes dreamed of the faces he had freed, the cousin who had smiled silently, the merchant whose hands had once clutched coins, the blacksmith who had taught him his craft. These dreams were vivid, haunting, and strangely comforting, a reminder that life and death were threads woven into a larger tapestry, one that Elias now understood better than anyone else. In the quiet hours, he returned to the edge of the old well and the cemetery, gazing at the stones and the gnarled trees that had witnessed centuries of fear. Though the carriage was gone, he felt a presence lingering in the air, a whisper of gratitude and remembrance. He knew that his life had been forever altered. The road no longer held terror for him, but it held memory, responsibility, and a solemn connection to what had been lost and what had been saved. Elias returned to his forge as dawn painted the horizon. His hands were steady, his mind alert, yet beneath his calm exterior, shadows danced in his eyes. He had faced what no other could, and carried with him the weight of histories and lives intertwined with the phantom road. The world outside remained unaware, but Elias understood that some doors, once opened, leave permanent marks, not in the world, but in the soul. Weeks passed, yet the memory of that night clung to Elias like a shadow he could not shake. Though the town had returned to its mundane rhythm, he sensed that his connection to the phantom road had not ended. Occasionally, in the quiet moments at his forge, he would feel a tug, a whisper at the edge of hearing, a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye. These were remnants, echoes of the souls he had freed, reminders that some things, once touched by the supernatural, never truly leave. Elias began to notice subtle changes in himself. His hands, once solely instruments of iron and fire, seemed attuned to currents unseen, as though he could feel the memory of every strike of hammer and anvil that had ever occurred along the haunted road. His eyes, dark and steady, now held glimmers of shadow, traces of lives he had witnessed, of moments suspended between existence and oblivion. Townsfolk noticed his silence, the quiet intensity with which he approached every task, but none could guess the truths that burned behind his gaze. One night, under a crescent moon, Elias returned to the road, not out of fear or duty, but out of a need for closure. The mist lay thin over the earth, and the wind whispered through the trees like forgotten voices. He approached the clearing where the carriage had last appeared and found the well, ancient and blackened, still yawning at the edge of the cemetery. There was no sign of the stagecoach, no lanterns, no passengers, but he felt them. The pull of the past, the echo of souls freed yet lingering, pressed gently on his mind. Opening the charred journal once more, Elias traced his fingers over the blank space where the final page had been. He did not expect answers, only a connection, a bridge between the world of the living and the memory of what had been. As he stared into the shadows, he glimpsed fleeting forms, faces, gestures, the faintest smiles, passing like wind-blown leaves. The road had been emptied, the spirits liberated, yet the story was not over. Its imprint remained, etched in him and the landscape alike. Suddenly, movement in the trees caught his eye. Figures emerged, shrouded in shadow, the followers of the Way of Shadows who had sought to keep the journal and the souls bound. They had come quietly, unseen, their intentions unclear. Elias felt the old fear flare, but it was tempered by resolve. He knew now that the power of the road was not in force alone, but in courage, knowledge, and the willingness to act when the world itself seemed to resist. He stepped forward, journal held like a shield, and spoke calmly but firmly. Words passed between them, quiet yet charged, as if the forest itself listened. The figures paused, then retreated, recognizing that their power could not overcome the will of one who had truly seen. Elias watched them vanish into the shadows, and for the first time, felt the road itself exhale, releasing tension that had lingered for centuries. He remained at the edge of the clearing until dawn, watching as first light touched the gnarled trees. The wind carried only the faintest whispers now, soft as a memory fading. Elias understood that he had changed irrevocably. The town would never know the depth of what had occurred, the lives saved, the chains broken. But he carried it all within him, shadows and light interwoven, a reminder that some journeys are meant to leave marks not on the world, but on the soul. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of crimson, Elias felt a quiet presence beside him. He turned, expecting shadows, yet saw nothing. And yet he knew, deep in his heart, that those he had saved had acknowledged him, their gratitude silent but eternal. The road, the carriage, the missing page, these were no longer threats but part of the tapestry of history he now carried. He had faced the unknown and prevailed, yet the echoes of that night lived on in the corners of his mind, subtle and unrelenting. Elias returned to his work, the hammer striking iron with steady rhythm. He was stronger, quieter, and more aware than he had ever been. The town slept, oblivious to the danger that had lurked beyond its borders, but Elias's eyes, dark and shadowed, held what no one else could see. He had touched the past, freed the lost, and endured the road's test. The phantom stagecoach was gone, the souls liberated, the journal destroyed. But Elias Boone remained, a living guardian of memories, a bridge between the world of the living and the echoes of those who had long passed. And as the night settled over the town, the road lay empty, silent, and at peace, for now. Yet in Elias's gaze, the shadows lingered, a reminder that some journeys never truly end, and that courage can leave its mark not on the world, but on the soul of the one who dares to confront the unknown.